Welcome all to Issues and Updates with the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners. Gary Schmidt, County Administrator, what's up first?
Thank you, Chair Smith. All commissioners are present. We'll start with a Housing Authority. Chair, would you please convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County. I neglected the date. The date is October 18, 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Online is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra. Ann, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good
Great.
morning.
Good morning. These are requests for consent agenda for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Item 1, approval of an amendment increasing funding to the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Lake Oswego and Metro for developer solicitation and selection for the Boones Ferry project in Lake Oswego. Amendment value is $5,759,788. For a total contract agreement is increased to $12,909,788. Funding is through Metro Regional Affordable Housing Bond Site Acquisition Program. Set-aside funds. No county general funds are involved. Tony Carter and Devin Ellen from the Housing Authority. Go ahead.
In 2021, with your approval, we entered into an MOU with Metro, the City of Lake Oswego, to explore the acquisition of land to develop affordable housing. The City of Lake Oswego identified a suitable location, and the Metro Site Acquisition Program obtained the land from the city for approximately 50 units of future affordable housing. This amendment would allow us to adjust the use of contribution funds, utilizing all remaining available funding to further this project.
Great. Any questions or comments on this one? Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, good morning. Okay, so this takes the value of the project to $12,900,000 and change. Now, is that the total amount? Okay, what is the total amount for these 50 units?
We don't know yet. We're in early pre-development phase. The purpose of this is Metro sets aside funds from the total Clackamas County allocation for their site acquisition program. It was $12.9 million. And since we don't have any other acquisitions in the pipeline, we just want to have flexibility to use all of the funds in that acquisition program to support this project.
So we're not sure how much this 50-unit project is going to cost, but $12,900,000 divided by 50 is already at $258,000 per unit. So I'm hoping that there'll be some economy and management in this project.
I hope that as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I haven't been briefed on the different partnerships for this because I know that most of our developments have the Metro dollars and then leveraging other entities with low-income tax credits and other funding. Who are the partners on this project?
Currently, it's the City of Lake Oswego, Metro, and the Housing Authority. Right now we're developing developer solicitation and conducting community outreach just to create a vision statement for the property, and then we'll include that in a developer solicitation. Developers will put forth proposals. We have a selection committee, and we'll select a developer using, folks from the community outreach part of it, the Housing Authority, Lake Oswego, and Metro.
Okay, so more to come on who might be selected as the developer and what they will bring to the table as far as
Funding.
and resources and partnership. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before this goes forward?
Just one.
Yes, Paul?
I just want to state, I mentioned this before, that the assemblage of the dollars, it's almost like a fundraising. You get a little bit of money here from someone, so another organization might say, okay, we're going to put in, and we see that there's some commitment to that, so it builds that. The other thing, as far as the cost, when you divide it by room, just bear in mind that what's included in these packages is the entire funding for the bonds, 30 years, so on. So it'd be like buying a house for $500,000, but if you calculate every payment in there, it's not a $500,000 house you're buying. It's going to be about $1.5 million. So to put it on equal plane or equal evaluation, I think we need to factor in the financing aspects and subtract that out to look at what the real construction cost was per unit. Is that fair?
Correct. That's correct.
Seeing no objections to this moving forward, what's up next?
Item 2, approval of an infrastructure and additional shared cost agreement with the Workforce Development Board regarding funding allocations for the WorkSource Clackamas Center. Total contract value is $275.39 for 1 year. That is the correct number. Funding through Ross Grant funds. No county general funds are involved.
Although this is a small dollar amount requiring the board's signature, we are doing so based on requirements set by Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act.
I see no objections to this moving forward, correct? Thank you.
Item 3, approval of an amendment to the regulatory agreement and loan agreement with Green Line Affordable Development Limited Partnership for the Fuller Road Station, changing the low-income housing tax credit set-aside from average income to 40/60 model, and approval to delegate signature authority per Resolution 1951. The amendment has no fiscal impact. The loan value remains at $8.57 million. Funding is through loan payments by Green Line. No county general funds are involved.
So this essentially changes the set-aside. The tax credit has 3 options you can choose from. They wanted to use the average income, so allowing them to have 5 units at 80% AMI. The IRS regulations were less than clear and had a lot of conflicts. They just recently issued new regulations that seem to be a little bit more straightforward, but the state housing agency hasn't adopted any policy around that yet, and they are in the midst of leasing up, so they are hoping to switch to the more widely used 40/60 tax credit set aside. Basically, the outcome is changing 5 80% AMI units to 60% AMI, and there's a couple other unit changes just to make the averaging work out that you can see on Table 2 of your packet, but that's the main change.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to give it a little bit of history and context on this. So when we put together our, I don't know what we called it, but it was sort of our priorities, values for the affordable housing metro bond, one of the things we were wanting to accomplish was mixed income housing. That was a value that we had stated, and this project came in with that with 5 units. And because the IRS regulations, which allowed for the mixed income tax credits, were so confusing, I actually spent quite a bit of time really trying to understand and do a deep dive on this. And I think this is a good thing for us to do at this point, but I don't think we should lose sight of utilizing low-income tax credits in a mixed-income way. May not in this project. It's kind of like the psilocybin issue when the Oregon Health Authority didn't have the rules promulgated in a way that makes for good governance. In this way, not having certainty about how you are proceeding with the affordable housing development makes it very challenging. So this provides certainty for this development, which I think is important.
Commissioner Savas?
I presume, a question for staff, I presume that when we make the calculation, we have an explanatory rationale how we got there? That kind of defends us in the case that it's interpreted otherwise, that there was a method to our madness, what our methodology was?
Correct, yeah, and it's all outlined in the board packet.
That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? See no objections to moving forward on this?
Item 4, approval of an amendment increasing funding and extending duration of a personal services contract with Do Good Multnomah for supportive services at Clayton Moore Commons and an assignment addendum to Clackamas County. The amendment value is $110,383.04 for 6 months. Total contract value is increased to $480,383.04 for 2 years and 6 months. Funding is through Metro Supportive Housing Services Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Clayton Moores are 24-unit veteran housing, and for the services to continue and ensure there is no gap in services, we need to extend the contract 6 months while we initiate the formal procurement and competitive process for a new contract and continue to provide these services.
Questions or comments on this? Any objections? Seeing none?
All right, that is the request. This will all be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Thank you. Chair, would you please now convene as the Board of County Commissioners?
Thank you, Ann Leenstra, for showing up. I will recess as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, we're continuing with requests for consent agenda. This is for the Board of County Commissioners. We'll start with elected officials, the Sheriff's Office. Item 1, approval of an amendment extending the duration and increasing funding for a subrecipient agreement with Oregon Health and Science University for system-level diversion strategies. The amendment value is $130,005. Total agreement value is increased to $279,963. Funding through the Comprehensive Opioid Abuse Site-Based Program Grant through the United States Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved. Malcolm McDonald from the Sheriff's Office, Community Corrections. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Malcolm McDonald for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, Parole and Probation. I'm here today for a contract amendment with OHSU. They are a research partner in our BGA grant focused on opioid abuse. Specifically, this grant funds a medication-assisted treatment coordinator within our jail focused on individuals coming in with opioid disorder.
So has this research been ongoing?
It's been ongoing. The pandemic slowed things down. We were able to get a no-cost extension from BGA.
Do we have any results?
Specifically, OHSU is working on the report that we do quarterly. One area just to highlight the problem we face. If we look at 2021 in the jail, there was over 876 individuals that entered the jail system that were monitored for withdrawal syndrome from opioid. During that same year, 337 were maintaining some sort of medication-related opioid use disorder while in custody. So it's an ongoing, we know it's a growing problem, we are making strides in the jail to address this and kind of leaders in that. It's the connection in the community that we still need to build upon.
So when does this grant for the study end?
It ends at September of 2023.
Okay, and at that point, will we have some results that we can have in hand to look at, what's working, what's not working?
We will from OHSU.
Do we have any preliminary results up to this point?
In front of me specifically?
Not in front of you
no.
today.
But
no.
they are working on a progress report that we could provide to the
Yes,
to the
I would
board.
like a progress report as soon as it comes out, if you would, please.
I can make that happen, Chair Smith.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions on this?
I would love to see that progress report as well.
As we all would, because, we all make assumptions about drug use, but it would be nice to have it quantified. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, so my question is, this aside, but the topic of whether it's drug abuse or it's alcohol abuse or it's mental health, you have a rough assessment of or idea of what the percentage of people that go through of that 800 per year, people that go through the jail, what percentage of those folks have some kind of a identified or symptoms of any of those three categories?
Well, in this particular, the 876 I referred to, they were monitored for opioid withdrawal. So that would be an indicator that they are suffering from a substance abuse disorder specifically related to opioids. One fact that came out of this that was interesting to me of the drug screenings they did on the population over the last 6 to 3 months, 77% also tested positive for methamphetamine in addition to their opioid, testing positive for some form of opioid. So they go together. So as we all have seen, there's a dramatic increase in opioid-related overdose deaths in our community and in the state. So we have a lot of work to do, and the state has a lot of work to do to help support the justice system and behavioral health.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Scholl?
On this issue of people being sent to the jail and suffering from opioid withdrawal, we've talked many times about the need for an intake center or an alternative to the jail. Could you tell us this morning if you see anything on your radar out there that's developing to actually become an alternative to the jail being used for folks to withdraw from drugs?
Well, I think we're looking for diversion strategies from jail for a number of areas, and Substance abuse is one of those. Mental health is another one of those. So the Undersheriff Morrison and myself are working actively to find a solution on some level that can start that conversation. Obviously, there's a large sum of money sitting out there from ballot measure 110 to stand up facilities in the communities that we're still waiting to see a result from that. But yeah, I'll be the first to say that we have a lot of work to do, and that's locally, we have work to do, but the state has a lot of work to do. I think locally, we've come up with solutions over the years to address that, but we are working on for what you are speaking to or something like that. We're trying to find a solution to divert people from jail that do not need to be in jail because of their substance abuse or mental health disorder.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Seeing no objections to going forward, Malcolm, thank you very much for doing this important work.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Yeah, Gary?
Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of a subrecipient grant agreement to Ant Farm for outreach services to older Clackamas County residents. Grant value is $106,276 for 28 months. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, if approved, this subrecipient agreement with Ant Farm would provide Older American Act-funded outreach services for households with at least one member over the age of 60 who are Hispanic or Latinx to expand access to food and nutritional supports along with other culturally appropriate services.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Scholl?
Mr. Cook, how does Ant Farm conduct its outreach to get the word out that this service is available in the community?
I don't know. I know they're embedded in the community, and they've been there at least the last 5 to 10 years, and they have multiple programs going on. So most of with Hispanic communities is word of mouth, so it's trust. And so if they're having any successes, it's because they've built that, they've integrated themselves into the community. But I will ask them that specifically and get that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
I know this is a little bit of an aside, but did anyone, when we were at the celebration of the opening of the Sandy Health Clinic, did anyone have a cookie there? That was an Ant Farm cookie.
I had 5.
So I think that might be a little bit of how they do outreach in the community, is with those amazing cookies. Anyway,
Yeah,
just
they
couldn't
do.
resist.
They do cater most of the.
Yeah.
Thank you.
events.
And Rod, you brought no cookies today, did you?
No, I didn't.
All righty. Seeing no objections to this moving forward.
Item 2, approval of an amendment to a grant agreement from Oregon Housing and Community Services for rent assistance services. Amendment has no fiscal impact. Grant value remains at $3,316,171. Funding is through Oregon Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
And as the administrator mentioned, this amendment clarifies the minimum spending target and has no dollar value. So it's just a housekeeping.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon Health Authority for behavioral health housing investment funds. Agreement value is $4,704,837.17 for 19 months. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, Oregon Health Authority has allocated $4.7 million for Clackamas County to expand supported housing and residential treatment services for individuals who are experiencing mental health and substance use disorders. This is for the aid and assist population that you've heard about from Mary Rumbaugh, our Director of Behavioral Health. And there's a backlog basically at the state hospital. And there's a federal lawsuit against the state, and so they're making dollars available to address this population.
So we are getting $526,000 for 2 years for how many felons that have been released from aid and assist?
That's not this. That's something different.
Am I asking the wrong question?
Yes, this is about the $4.7 million that we're getting to create some services for that population.
Well, I know, but how big is the population is my question.
I don't have that number, but I can.
I think
get
there's a
that.
projected number, and my concern is that this population is so. Mary Rumbaugh, are you going to come up and answer my questions? No apologies. Please introduce yourself.
Mary Rumbaugh, Behavioral Health Division Director. Thank you for letting me pop in. We currently have 24 individuals at the state hospital. It's important to know that these are folks who have been charged. They have not been, they have been charged with a crime, but because of their mental health condition and concern, they have been either directed by the judge to be restored at the state hospital, or the judge has directed us to restore them in the community. The goal is to get as many people into the community, but our lack of behavioral health specific housing for this population has been a challenge. So that's where these dollars are very focused on. But we currently have 24 individuals at the state hospital.
And they're going to be released slowly over the next 2 years?
That's correct. So you're speaking to the Mossman order.
Yes, I'm speaking to the Mossman order.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
the crimes they have been charged with, are they misdemeanors or felonies, and do we know?
We do know. The majority for us who are at the state hospital, these are felonies. We have just a handful of folks, maybe less than 6, who have been charged with a misdemeanor.
So the folks that have been charged with felonies, can you tell me what those felony charges are?
We can get you that information.
Yes, because I suspect it's quite severe, or it wouldn't be a felony.
Correct. We do not have Measure 11, as far as I know. So there's sort of the person-to-person concern felonies, but between myself and the jail, we can actually get you that information.
So does our sheriff go pick up these people at the hospital and then bring them to our jail?
So that question was just posed to me, and I got Kathy Rostetter that answer. It sort of depends. They do some transport, and if the person is actually not returning to the jail, we don't want them. If they're going to actually be able to return to a community placement, then we work with a provider or a family member to have them transported so they don't actually have to be transported to the jail to then be released.
And then how long are they placed in these community places?
It really depends, which is part of the Mossman order, is that Mossman order is now setting a limit on how long somebody can be in restoration at the state hospital. The recommendation by the neutral consultant that the federal government hired, she will likely recommend to the state that they also put those same parameters on, quote, community restoration, so that 90, 180
And do we
days in
know
1 year.
if this money is going to cover all the costs that counties are incurring from this decision?
So this money will just be focused on housing. We have additional dollars that have come to us to be focused on community restoration. And Chair Smith, no, the money is never quite adequate, but it's certainly more than we have ever seen for this particular population.
But how often do we have aid and assist? I mean, that's fairly new decision.
No, Aid and Assist has been around for actually a long time. We
But
have
the release
historic.
the release of people from.
Oh, correct. And
That's what I'm
really,
referring
you're correct. In the most recent years, the judges have, because there's been lack of community placement, the judges have really determined that the best place for individuals to be restored is the state hospital, which is why there's this federal lawsuit against the state.
So for the future, when the money runs out and parameters are put on the counties that people can only be housed in these facilities or for so long, then these people could be out on the streets?
Yeah. Yeah, there will be a limit. The judge has to ultimately make sort of a decision. They're either able to aid in their own defense or they're not able. If they're unable, charges are dropped and they're released to the community. Our goal would be that we don't just release them, but they won't be able to remain in this housing.
And that is each individual's decision at the very end.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. It's a
Commissioner-
complex population for sure.
Yes, it is, it is. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes. Ms. Rumbaugh, could you clarify one thing here? Now, you have 24 patients in the state hospital that are there because of felonies combined with mental health issues. And you've been given $4.7 million for 19 months to bring them back to the county, but you have not defined the actual housing situation that they're going to be provided. Is Is that correct?
So we are in internal conversation around, similar to what the Housing Division is looking at, could these dollars be used to purchase a hotel? And that's pretty typical about what my colleagues across the state are doing. Hotels are pretty available, and it's easy to actually do a quick update to motels to actually have people have individual rooms with a basic little kitchen, things like that. Or we will look at properties that are available. So we have not, we were clearly told we were to not spend $1 until this contract was approved by you all. So we have not, we are truly in the initial phase of just looking at what are our options. We could potentially put these dollars out for a community-based provider to go ahead and lift up a facility or a program. So there's lots of options. It's pretty flexible on how we can spend it. We just know that the priority population has to be focused on aid and assist.
And this $4.7 million for 19 months, does it come with a timetable, a start date?
It's, as soon as we can get the dollars in our bank account, we can start spending them. In the 19 months, it's important that the state had to give us an end date on the contract, but they've been very clear that we will be able to actually carry forward that beyond the end date if, in fact, we haven't spent all of the 4.7. They have no interest in having these dollars come back to them. They want it to be spent into the community.
Okay, thank you.
So $4.7 million, but by your own admission, that's not going to be enough to cover what's going to be required for treatment.
Correct. We will have to look at other resources for treatment. And to be clear, it's one-time funding, which is always a challenge, so we will have to also be looking at partners and other funding to maintain operations. So we appreciate the legislature for passing this, but it also really makes it a challenge to spend it when it's one time.
Further questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
I do have just one, and I know there's a lot of discussions right now going on around the state, and I know that KGW has done, forgot the name, the story, I think they do that 6 o'clock show, and they've done a lot of work on, and investigative work on mental health treatment and finding some challenges or problems or with the system. I know this system's got to be revamped, it appears. That's my opinion. Is there, Mary, just a question, is there in your observation any kind of a group that's working on some recommendations that, as mental health professionals and so forth, that they would have the insights and the keen knowledge of what we really need to reconstruct or restructure our mental health treatment in the state?
Yeah, so the governor's office appointed one of their staff to actually facilitate a statewide planning group, and there was things around administrative burden, there were things around the aid and assist forensic population. So we actually have about a 7-page document of recommendations of where the system has to improve and change, and not just sort of fix, but actually move to the next generation of really how behavioral health services both need to be structured and funded. It's just been such an underfunded system for generations, and so we're constantly sort of playing that catch up. So there was a governor's task force that I actually was part of.
Okay, and last question on this topic. It's been mentioned here, I sat in on a state meeting here about, I think, a year and a half ago, and they were talking about the availability of mental health workers, people. They had a 553 shortage of people available. And part of that was attributed to, digging a little bit deeper, was the high standards in which we certify in the state of Oregon.
Yep.
Is there any legislation discussion about how we bring that to a level that the bar's not so high?
Yep. Yeah, Multnomah County is actually drafting a legislative concept that would actually align our credentialing, our requirements similar to Washington County, as well as some interstate agreements so that we can entice people from other states to actually come work in or be certified also in Oregon. So there's actually some active concepts being drafted right now.
Great, thanks for your answers.
Yeah.
Seeing no objections to this moving forward, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, approval of an amendment to a grant from the Oregon Department of Education for a continuation of coordinated enrollment services for families eligible for publicly funded preschool programs. Amendment value is $303,000 for 1 year. Grant value is increased to $526,500 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Education. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, approval of this amendment will extend the term of the agreement and increase the funding, allowing us to continue to provide these essential services for the future.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, Rod, how many children does this serve normally? Can you give me a ballpark?
I don't have the exact number, but I can
Okay,
get
you
that.
can get
for
it
you.
to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Rod.
Okay.
Seeing no objections to this moving forward.
Item 5, approval of an assignment addendum from the Housing Authority for a personal service contract with Do Good Multnomah for supportive services at Clayton Moore Commons. Assignment has no fiscal impact. Contract value remains at $480,383.04 for 2 years and 6 months. Funding is through Metro Supportive Housing Services funds. No county general funds are involved.
This is going to sound familiar from the HAC part of the discussion. So this addendum was discussed earlier, and it's just the housekeeping where you're moving things from Housing Authority over to the county into H3S.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
That is all for H3S. Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of an infrastructure and additional shared cost agreement with the Workforce Development Board regarding the funding allocations for the WorkSource Clackamas Center. No fiscal impact. There is no current or past financial contribution from Clackamas County. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. This is essentially a partnering document that goes with the document you approved for HAC for a whopping $270. There's no money associated with this particular agreement. Essentially, it's just authorizing the board chair, Smith, as she is the chief elected officer for the Clackamas Workforce Partnership, to execute this document and sign it. That's all it is. It's just, it has been signed by all the other partners. This is basically the last step to formalize this. You did sign a similar agreement for last year, from July 1 to 2021 that was good through June 30th of 2022. This agreement will go from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. So you've seen this all before, but if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections to this moving forward, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that is the consent agenda request. All of them will be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Next, Chair, would you please convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Water Environment Services Board.
You're now meeting as the Water Environment Services Board. These are 2 discussion items for you, Commissioners. These are not decision points, but we wanted to give you a chance to meet as the Water Environment Services Board to give feedback and input to staff before they come back to you with decision points later. The first item is Water Environment Services Debt Management Policy. Greg Geist and Aaron Blue from Water Environment Services. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. First thing I want to say is today is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, which is really the foundation of the work that we've been doing for the last 50 years. And in a way, the next presentation, I'll speak more to that. So earlier this year, the county adopted an updated debt management policy to provide further clarity and reflect debt management best practices. The county provided WES a draft of the proposed policy for review, and after discussion around the significant amount of debt that WES issues, it was recommended that WES be authorized to develop its own debt policy. The county's adopted policy delegates that authorization to WES. We are here today to provide information on the proposed policy, highlight key policy provisions, and request to hold a policy session for further review and consideration for approval.
Go ahead, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair. My name is Erin Blue. I'm the Finance Manager for WES, and we have a short presentation to accompany this item.
Yeah, please go ahead.
If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, to provide some background on WES's existing debt management as context for the proposed policy, WES holds a AAA credit rating, which is the highest rating through S&P Global. That was originally assigned in 2018 and affirmed in February of 2021. It's given to the issuers with the strongest creditworthiness. WES currently has 2 debt issues outstanding, as well as 3 state loans, all totaling about $149 million in principal. Our most recent issuance was February 2021 for $40 million at 0.84%, the Series 2021 revenue obligations. The timing of that borrowing enabled us to lock in interest savings of over $8 million over the term of the debt. Our long-term financial plan anticipates $344 million of sewer capital investment over the next 10 years, for which we anticipate we'll need to borrow about $120 million starting in 2026-27. So we have significant financing needs that we anticipate over the next 10 years. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm used to having someone else drive the PowerPoint. As Greg shared, the county adopted an updated debt management policy just this July, and that policy formalizes best practices as recommended by GASB, or the Government Accounting Standards Board. That policy also delegated WES the authority to adopt its own policy. The county's updated debt policy was the starting point for WES's proposed policy. Included with the issues memo today in the materials is a red line of the county's policy so that you can see how WES's policy mirrors the county's policy, as well as the specific changes that were made to make the policy specific to WES. The primary difference between the two policies is that WES's proposed policy establishes WES as the policy owner and authorizes us to continue managing WES's debt. WES's draft policy also incorporates utility management best practices, which arise out of WES's organization as an enterprise fund or business-type activity as opposed to a general government-type fund. Those include the option of consideration of revenue obligations as a type of financing in addition to revenue bonds, both payable through ratepayer fees. They include the evaluation of low-cost financing options specific to the clean water industry, such as the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Loan Program and the Federal Water Infrastructure Program. WES's policy also specifies our debt strategy for ensuring cost-effective funding for capital investment while also maintaining affordable rates. In November 2021, we presented the proposed policy to the WES Advisory Committee. We followed that up with a second presentation in February of 2022. At that second meeting, the advisory committee voted to recommend adoption of the new policy. We also shared our policy with county finance management in August of 2022, and the proposed WES policy incorporates county finance's input as well. In conclusion, we would like to respectfully request that the board authorize some time at an upcoming policy session for further review and consideration of adoption of WES's proposed policy.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure I heard you correctly I'm going to ask a question. Did you say in 2026 you would need to borrow an additional $140 million?
Starting in 2026-27, we anticipate we'll need to start borrowing. We won't need to borrow $120 million at that time. We'll need to borrow $120 million between 2026-27 and 2032-33 to fund capital investment.
So wasn't last year you issued a huge bond sale and got a very good rate for capital construction?
Correct.
So how is this different than from that bond issuance last year?
It would be just another one when we need to do it again. You're going to be seeing a 5-year capital, we actually have about 11-year capital improvement plan and a financial strategy associated with that. Those are the things that you approve. And that's when we have a discussion about those long-term rates and our strategy to borrow and to spend down our construction reserves.
So in order to pay for that borrowing, do you anticipate raising rates?
Yes, about 5% a year.
Okay.
And so your 5% a year increase starting this year and next year going forward, you anticipate that 5% increase in rates will also cover additional borrowing for the future?
Yes.
Boy, your crystal ball is a heck of a lot better than mine.
Well, and I'm fortunate to be able to have that kind of crystal ball, and it was really the formation of the WES 190 partnership that allowed us to do the types of studies that you're going to be hearing about next, that allow us to really understand what our needs are over the long period and have confidence that we can predictably and reliably have the rates to do that. And so we're very fortunate that we have a long-term, we've done a lot of planning work the last few years, and we're not looking at serious rate increases.
Okay, we have two commissioners, Commissioner Scholl and then Commissioner Savas.
Chair Smith, your questions were exactly what I was going to ask.
Oh,
And that was about considering the current debt, the projection for new borrowing, and the debt strategy, would it have a negative impact on ratepayer fees? And you already answered that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, my question is more about the why and what. So you have surface water activities, and you also have wastewater. So can you just tell me how much of that you foresee in that time period between 2024 and 2032, 36, or whatever that number was? And how much of it is surface water, where the rates are applied to? Is that generalized and over averaging the two activities, or is that really all wastewater?
Well, it's averaging, but we have different rates for the different activities. So when I'm talking about a 5% rate increase, that's to fund the bulk of our sanitary sewer system. We're going to be talking next about our storm system master plan, and that is a separate source of money, and we'll have a separate need for borrowing and the amount for borrowing and a rate profile associated with that. I think it's on the last page of the staff report.
And we do have another presentation regarding wastewater coming up.
Yeah, and
Maybe you want to hone in on that.
yeah,
Commissioner Savas?
I won't be here at that time. I need to leave here in a little bit. So my other question, I think my closing question is that on the why, how much of that is capacity and how much of that is literally either O&M or it's related to environmental requirements?
Good question. It's about 50-50.
All right.
Wow.
That's all I have.
Okay. They've requested policy session, Gary. Is there a time on this? Is it more timely than others, or just when we can get it scheduled?
We would schedule before the end of the year, if you all agree, if you
Okay,
agree.
thank you. And are we done with the screen, or no?
No.
Okay.
All right, so thank you. The next item, still your meeting, is the Water Environment Services Board. This is the Storm System Master Plan. Again, this is an informational update to seek your questions and input. Greg Geist is still here and joined by Ron Waringa. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. So as I alluded to, today's 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. It's kind of the foundation of what we do. And as I just mentioned, the type of work that we're going to show you today is also foundational to what we do. It's the in-depth, hard look at what our systems, how they're performing, what their needs are, what it's going to cost to do the capital projects that we need to do, and allows us to plan far out into the future. So this is not something that we would ask for approval for. This is an engineering study. We call it a master plan. But I just want you folks to be familiar with it, because this is what determines what we come up with for a 5-year capital improvement plan and 5 to 10-year capital improvement plan and subsequent rates associated with that. So you'll see what it would cost to fully fund all of the projects that are recommended in this plan over the next 10 years. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Great, go away,
Please
Ron.
introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. I'm Ron Waringa with Water Environment Services. And we do really appreciate your time today to talk with us about this major milestone. As Greg said, the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act is a huge milestone today, and then more locally for us, presenting this master plan to the board is a big deal. This is our first storm system master plan in our history. We initiated the project in 2019 after the formation of WES, which Greg mentioned earlier, unifying our service districts. And this is a long time coming, some would say. Commissioner Savas, you've expressed that in the past, and Greg and I both feel the same way. We've really been excited about doing this project and are anxious and excited to talk to you today about it. So like Greg said, today we're going to present the project itself, tell you a little bit about what we did, and really the what and the where of the Storm System Master Plan. This plan really says what we need to do going forward. It results in recommendations in the plan itself, and we also will provide some context for revenue requirements. I think it's an important part of the discussion. While it's not part of the master plan itself, the financial analysis, we have conducted a financial analysis that tells us what it might take to fund the plan. So it can tell us how realistic that might be. And again, those decisions will come at another time. We'll cover that. And then to hear your input and answer questions, that's really what we're after today. Not sure what I point this at. Oh, there we go.
So our goals, what are we trying to accomplish with this plan? Overarching, our goal is to really figure out what needs to be done to maintain and improve the storm system and improve the function of the storm system. I do want to flag that, we manage wastewater systems and stormwater systems. They're very different. The wastewater system or a sanitary system, depending on how you refer to it, is a closed system from toilet to treatment plant. It's a closed system. How wastewater gets from here in this building to our Tri-City treatment plant is a very different system and a very different pathway from how rainwater that falls on this site essentially gets to the same place, which is down to the mouth of Abernathy Creek. So our storm system is largely decentralized and in pieces. It's not closed. We discharge water in whatever community you're in from the storm system into receiving waters as soon as you can. So the planning for that type of system is very different than the wastewater system. A lot less modeling, a lot more sort of in community or in neighborhood spot repairs. So, this tells us really what needs to be done to the system, and then we figure out how to do it and how to fund it over a particular time frame. As Greg said, this is more about the what than the how, but we'll get into that a little bit. The goals of our planning effort on this slide really to document what we know are some deficiencies in the system. The system is aging. Like I said, it's very complex. We know there are issues that we need to address. So it really would help us create a framework for dealing with those. We know about a lot of the problems, and our community knows about a lot of the problems, but we need a way to gather them and to put them into buckets, essentially, that we can try and deal with them. A major part of that is also, as a program, developing a 10-year capital improvement plan for major projects. There were a couple of other elements we did at the time we were doing this planning effort or starting it. The city of Happy Valley was going through their comprehensive land use plan for Pleasant Valley and North Carver, and so we did some siting of potential regional facilities to accommodate that growth as part of the plan. And then there were some policies that from programmatically that we worked with our consultant on to help us really guide our program going forward, and those are all elements in the plan as well. From a process, this has been a group effort. West works on behalf of other county departments like Department of Transportation and Development, and City of Happy Valley and City of River Grove from a surface water management standpoint. So there was heavy involvement of our partners in developing the plan. Really started with discovery, which was really to, like we said, collect and analyze existing information from our asset management system, our database, our service requests from flooding complaints, things like that we've gotten in the past. We do have plans on the shelf. We've had some watershed action plans over the years and had individual studies in some areas that had potential projects as well. And we worked with the maintenance folks at City of Happy Valley and county transportation maintenance as well to say, what do you know of? And we assembled all of those projects into one place. So really kind of finding what's out there and creating a framework for that, really shaking the trees and seeing what comes down. Another part of it is visioning, is really to kind of create a system for rating projects and figuring out what is high priority and what are we going to do. And then the solutions piece, and that's what we'll talk most about today, which is the programs that we've created to handle these projects, to rank the high priority projects and identify them and give us that CIP. That was our approach to this planning effort. From a discovery standpoint, we found a lot of stuff. Our database included over 216, over 200 known issues of various types: water quality, quantity, erosion, drainage issues, flooding issues. And not everything that was flagged as an issue was really a project that we would deal with. For some of those projects, it wasn't within our authority, it wasn't our responsibility, or there really wasn't a project there to do. So from that, just over 100 potential projects were identified. And we'll talk a little bit about those. So what do those look like? This is kind of what those projects look like, and these are all real issues, many of which we have addressed over the past couple of years. We have capacity issues. At the very top of the slide is a capacity issue off a street called Diamond Court, where there was not enough capacity in the system. It routinely flooded yards and homes, and we had to rebuild that conveyance system to give it the capacity that it needed. We have pollution issues. We have pipe breaks and sinkholes, erosion, that bottom slide in the middle is just from water that's not getting into the storm system and making its way downhill, which is what it does, and causing erosion of a recreational pathway. And then the photo on the right is one of our biggest repair issues recently. Right at the very beginning of the pandemic, like the first month, we had a detention pipe collapse in someone's backyard that required a significant repair for us to stabilize. And so the system has needs over time. We are trying to anticipate these needs beyond routine maintenance and repair, but these are the types of things that we deal with on a routine basis. So we created like I said, we created a framework to organize our projects into, which enables us to manage projects of similar types with consistent planning and design tools. I'll note, not all good projects come in big packages, and so a lot of these programs are really intended to, the top 5, and we'll talk about those a little bit, they're really intended to gather up the smaller projects that really aren't very complex, probably not all that expensive, a high percentage shot, something that we know can fix the issue, and bin them into ways to manage them. The picture on here is an example of one that we did recently in 2021. We had water that was not going where it was supposed to go as designed from a subdivision constructed years ago. And relatively simple solution, create a basin, capture the water and feed it where it needs to go, problem solved. The people's yards and homes stopped flooding. We have a lot of things like this, and this framework helps us manage that. So we'll talk about what these programs look like over the next few slides. The first program is detention pond repair and rehabilitation. Our detention ponds that have been built really over the many decades, originally for flooding and flow control, and now a lot of them address water quality as well. They have routine maintenance needs every year, and then occasionally, they trap sediment over time, they build a lot of vegetation, they really need an overhaul. And we're getting to the point in our storm system where quite a few of these ponds are in the overhaul stage. It includes sediment and vegetation removal, cleaning out can be somewhat expensive. We have done several of these over the past few years. I think we've done 9 detention pond rehabs in the last few years. They can be relatively expensive, $40,000 to $50,000, because we're moving a lot of material. But there's certainly, we created a program for this because there are nearly 60 of these that we know we'll need to do over the next decade to keep the system functioning. Another program that we have, we developed is for water quality retrofits. I will note that we do, this is a mandated activity. We do have requirements in our municipal stormwater permit to do retrofits. It doesn't say how many we have to do. It just says we have to have a program to do them and do some. So we developed, in looking at some known water quality issues, around 9 actually water quality retrofit projects where we would install something in the system to provide better pollutant removal. Here there are pictures of a project we did recently on Nello Way where we were actually solving a drainage issue, but we had an opportunity to put in a water quality device and lower our mobilization costs, so we took that opportunity, and that's what these projects look like. Small drainage projects. So these are really places where, water's not getting into the system, it's not moving through the system, it's not coming out of the system where we want it to. The purpose of this program is really to address these issues within our district. We have right now 35 known drainage issues that are either, channelization or erosion, or like I said, actual water going into homes and properties. These address nuisance flooding issues. I don't want to say safety is clearly not a nuisance issue, but where we have roadway flooding, we address it there. And if there's nuisance flooding even on private property that's being caused by the public transportation system, these are the projects we handle, and we do handle projects that are causing property damage, which are high priorities for us as well. So we built a program for those. Restoration of property acquisition, this is really intended to restore, revegetate, acquire habitat if we need to, and manage those properties to improve water quality. We place a high value on restoration and the health of our streams. Our community does as well. And so we do have some projects identified where we can either remove culverts to make streams healthier, place wood to deal with erosion, or improve floodplain restoration. And again, not all of them are large. If they're large enough and complex enough, like our Three Creeks project, they become a capital improvement project. But there are some small ones that we can address through this program that we created as well. And the last one, we have areas in our service districts where we put water into the groundwater instead of into surface water, and it's actually a preferred way to manage stormwater runoff as long as it's clean. We have underground injection control devices, dry wells, things like that, where we can safely and reliably discharge from our storm system, but there are some times where that might cause water quality issues for the groundwater, and that we are mandated by permit to discharge to the groundwater to identify those areas that might be threats to groundwater, and if we find them, to either decommission those facilities or retrofit them with water quality devices. And right now we have about 10. We have to do assessments every few years of these devices, and right now we know about 10 that we need to address sometime in the next decade or so. So that's the what. Those are the programmatic elements for some of the smaller projects. The last major element of the plan is our capital improvement projects. And those are really, like I said, more complex projects that need significant attention and resources. Of the project list that we had, we identified 32 individual capital improvement projects that we could endeavor to do over the next decade or so. They were all ranked, and I'll talk about the ranking system in a minute, and scored, and then we selected from those lists 10 of the higher ranking CIPs. We didn't select the top 10. We really tried to balance, because we know they need to be done at some point over time. We really wanted to have a balance of project types. So we skipped over some. We had several culvert and restoration projects that we felt like we wanted to get some more storm system projects on the list. So what you see on the slide is the 10 projects that were selected for the CIP. If you'll note, there's a focus, and it's my bottom left, I'm assuming it's everybody's bottom left. The upper Kellogg Creek Basin, just southeast of Milwaukee, has quite a few drainage issues that we're well aware of, and so we for this effort, and again, sort of for economy of scale, we focused on the area of upper Kellogg Creek, and the rest are spread throughout the district. For how we ranked projects, our ranking system really reflects our goals and priorities. Our goals at WES and in managing our surface water and our storm system is to address flooding and conveyance capacity, addressing urgent maintenance issues, water quality, watershed and stream health, as we've discussed. Projects that provide multiple benefit are high value, especially if there's some recreation opportunities or we meet other important community needs, and then prioritizing easier implementation of projects. So we, kind of start with the lower hanging fruit. There is no low hanging fruit, it seems, in stormwater projects sometimes, but prioritizing projects that are easier to implement, easier permitting. We own the land. Those certainly got more points as well. So our goals in doing work are those. Our priorities are really reflected in the weighting of those goals. And our priorities will change over time. Right now, and based on what we've heard from our community and what we've heard from our staff and what we know about from known issues, that we know that flooding and maintenance issues are a top priority, so they are weighted higher. They have a higher weighting than water quality and stream health, as well as multi-benefit and implementation. So we created this rating system to score and rank our capital improvement projects to help us find the path for implementation. And this is the list of the 10 that were selected. Again, not the 10 most highly ranked. I think they're all within the top 15, and then their scores. They do tend to bunch up kind of in the middle when we use that multi-parameter weighting system, but these were the 10 were selected and their estimated costs. We had our contractor for these 10 selected projects in the plan develop concept plans so we can do some more reliable cost estimating, and it totals up to about $22 million worth of work for these 10 projects. There are other projects on the list, and some of these might fall off if we're determined to be infeasible or not something that we can address, and then we would pull more up from the list and work on those over time.
And I would just add that those concept plans are what we provided the board when we had the discussion about ARPA.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, Craig, and thank you for the appropriation for that funding. Those were 3 of the 10 projects on our list, so it enables us to get a good start going forward. So the framework that we created, again, there are 6 programs for us to, in order to manage these projects that we know we need to get to over time. This table summarizes the estimated average annual cost to fund those projects on 2 different timeframes. Right now in this plan, we're recommending an ambitious 10-year timeframe to address a lot of these issues. This is also, a 15-year plan, just 15-year timeline shown here, which would lower the annual cost. It just spreads out, the amount of time that we would need to deal with some of these issues. And from a 10-year standpoint, it comes out to about $3.8 million a year. Just a reminder that we currently budget between $1 and $2 million annually for our construction projects, so we're not starting, it's not from 0 to this level. It's an increase from 1 to 2 million to 3 to 4 million if we choose to do that over a 10-year time frame, which is a decision down the road. And I'll also note that from a staffing needs standpoint, there is a recommendation in our master plan about staffing levels needed to implement these projects, so to deliver these projects. West currently has 1 surface water engineer that does a lot of really good work.
Part-time.
So we would potentially need, from an operational standpoint, some staffing to deliver. So as I said before, we did a financial analysis. I think it's good due diligence to say, so what would it take to deliver this plan and help us make future decisions, and particularly about the time frame. In this analysis, which we did in-house, and it's not part of the plan, it's a separate analysis. Erin Blue, who you heard from earlier today, and her team evaluated what it would take to get the plan implemented on a 10-year time frame. As an example, the assumptions are noted on the slide, or our goals. 1, we would assume using our operating, construction, and system development charge funding sources. We have all those now. The rate we would need to determine the rate revenue needed to meet all operating costs. So we're talking about construction here and our construction funds, but the analysis was all future operating capital and debt service needs over a 10-year time frame. Again, our goals are predictable and stable rates, fair and equitable cost recovery, and revenue stability. So that's what we are after. And this is a very high level of summary of the analysis. This is what the 10-year financial forecast would look like to fund the plan. We'd start with using surface water construction and system development charge fund balances. We have intentionally built up those balances over the last several years that we've been doing this planning effort. We knew we would need to get started, and so we are currently sitting, and that's the dash line that comes down from the upper left, on close to $15 million in available funding to get started. That would be drawn down over time. And that to sustainable reserve levels based on our other financial policies. We would need rate increases that would need to be fund our increasing operational costs for the next 10 years. As we know, our communities are growing, our service district is growing, and our storm system is growing as well. New customers do mean new revenue, but it's not always sufficient to cover the costs, and we are continually getting new regulatory requirements, which from a surface water management standpoint just means do more. So we do anticipate some increase in operational costs over time. About 5% is what we think we would need on the operational side. Our analysis would indicate that a 6.5% annual rate increase would be needed to fund the plan over a 10-year time frame. A longer time frame would flatten that curve. We are aggressively pursuing outside funding sources, and like Greg had said, the ARPA funds that the board allocated to us or appropriated help flatten that curve as well. But with a large part of that curve, which is the green line going from left to right and increasing in terms of rates, we do anticipate some increases from an operational needs standpoint. We would note that we would need to start borrowing at some point to fund the projects. That's the dash line that's flat and then increases around 2028, 2029 to about around just short of $5 million. And so that would add to some of the rate pressure as well. And again, pursuing outside funding, we've applied for 3 federal grants for the Three Creeks project recently. We haven't been awarded any federal money, but we will aggressively pursue outside funding sources to try and take pressure off of our own local funds. Did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little context. 6.5% annual rate increase, that seems, and it is, from a percentage standpoint, a lot. But I wanted to put it in context a little bit. So our current surface water fee that we charge a household is $8.15 a month. When you look at our 13 peers, everyone, West Lynn, Clean Water Services, Oak Lodge, Salem, Milwaukee, Gladstone, the average monthly rate today is almost $13. So we're well below average. And actually, Ron's going to share a number. Our rates would go from this $8.15 to $15, I think, and change in 10 years. And there's already 5 of the 13 peers that are above that today. So we're saying in 10 years, we will have rates that 5 of our peers have today, and we will fully fund this 10-year program, which I think is a nicer story to tell than just focusing on the 6.5%.
And so, let's talk about when that would happen and how the future board actions fit into this planning process. As Greg said, this is one of our long-term plans, our long-term capital plans at West. Those long-term plans feed into our ongoing 5-year sort of rolling capital improvement plan that we update every year. That 5-year CIP is something that we ask the board to review and approve. And then that will be used to develop our annual budgets, our conversations with our stakeholders, our West Advisory Committee, and as part of the budget development and approval process, rate setting, which is a board action that will happen at a future time. So this long-term plan really helps us address where we need to go and start to get some certainty about the type of work we need to do. And then ultimately we will adjust and we will implement the plan and we will adjust as we go pending future board action. I think that's really important to understand from the context of the planning standpoint. We did present this storm system master plan to our West Advisory Committee on 3 different occasions, and they did fully endorse moving it forward for conversation with the board and finalizing the plan. So we have broad support from our advisory committee for this as well. Last one.
Oops, sorry.
And so as we move into discussion, I did want to take the opportunity to express my and our deep gratitude and thanks to our one surface water engineer, Leah Johansson, who's here today. She really brought this plan together, and we really honestly wouldn't have gotten it done without her expertise. She's not only managing projects, but she managed this planning project pretty much all by herself. And we're very thankful to Leah for that. And also thank you for your ongoing support. We've really appreciated it, your time today, and we'll take input and questions if you have them.
I do have some questions, and I see Commissioner Shoulders too. So, of the funds you plan to borrow for the future of $120 million over time, Tony, could you roll up that up, please, too? And your past bonding, is there any overlap of that to this?
No, that is fully funded by our sanitary sewer rates, and this would be fully funded by our surface water rates.
Okay, so I think that's a distinction that needs to be made, because you just previously presented a debt management plan for us. Oh, sorry, debt management plan for us. Should I repeat the question? Whatever. Thanks, Sonia. You're welcome. And I think there needs to be, the next time you come forward, you need to say this column and this column, so we can keep track of. This is a ton of information, just a ton. It's very good, I appreciate it. So you have the debt on one side of the ledger to take care of this, and then we have the other ledger to take care of this. It's 2 separate pots of money, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you're confident that you can acquire, how would you pay for that? So people's rates are going to go up. So on the one side of the ledger, we're going up 5% over here,
Yes.
and then 6.5% over here?
If we fully fund the 10-year capital
If you
plan.
fully fund, okay, and then you say you could flatten it out. So we're probably looking at a 10% increase in people's monthly bills starting when?
Next year.
Next year, okay, all right. Okay, well, I know there's a lot of people who have had flooding issues, and I visited a couple, and Commissioner Savas has visited a couple, And the monthly charges are fairly low on this, and I think, a few dollars more or $1 more a month may not be so burdensome to take care of these problems. But it's going to take a lot of time. And as our population increase, as we've been mandated by the legislature for infill of housing, so more people will be concentrated in a smaller area in our unincorporated areas, it's really going to become more problematic over time. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, thank you, Greg, Ron, and Aaron, for this information. Do you have any situations where a city's stormwater system has to empty into a west stormwater system? And is there any exchange of funding to cover that?
No, Commissioner, just an exchange of water. But there are several, our system is interconnected with Milwaukee and Oak Lodge in quite a few places. We are actually required to, in our new permit, which we received last year, to map those connections. But when one system transitions to another, and largely they're serving roadways, unless the county continues operation and maintenance of that roadway within some other jurisdiction, the pipes, it just transitions to the other municipality for them to manage the runoff. But there isn't an exchange of funding for runoff discharge from one municipality to another.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Currently.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for all of this information. I really appreciate the thoughtful criteria for how the master plan was put together. The one thing that I'm interested in, I really love the flyers that were put together for when we did the American Rescue Plan allocation. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I know that it talks stormwater and repair and all speak, but it doesn't really explain the situation that people go through. It will say properties flooded, but it doesn't give a context. At least I'm not seeing it in the document as to what this means for people. And I'm sure we have that somewhere, but I would just like to, at some point, just dig a little deeper, just to really understand the impacts, so that when I look at this list, because it's a lot of names of things,
Sure.
I can say, oh, well, that was when that area, and that was caused by the stormwater, and it was, and I love the pictures also. I mean, they're horrible in a way, because you see these terrible erosion, you see the sinkholes, and it's just like, oh my goodness. But having a context of, where those were and what the people that were there, just the people at the other end of all these decisions, always trying to connect those.
Yeah, that's great input, Commissioner. And I think, part of the fuller master plan, which is a 100 and some page document, we do certainly talk a little bit more about the underlying issues and problems, and those fact sheets that we prepared that were for the ARPA projects. We have one of those for every project in the CIP list, and it does have pictures of the issues and kind of talks about the solution. So it is more fully developed in the full document itself. We also have an atlas of all the known issues that's many, many pages. I don't think we even sent that over because it was just the known issues, and it was a large appendix. But certainly that's good. That's really good input. And Lee and I will go back and look at the plan, which is just in its final stages, and see if there's an opportunity to improve the people's story.
Yeah, well, and I'm fine taking a field trip over if you have a hard copy just to go through.
Yeah, we can bring you on.
I'm happy to just spend the time looking at it. You don't necessarily have to improve it for this. I know that commissioners, we get all of our information in different ways. I'm interested in also in doing some field trips, and some constituents have reached out to me about that. But
Sure.
It's just so important what we're doing. Appreciate the work.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, Greg.
I just wanted to toot our horn just a little bit on, I mentioned that we compare ourselves to 13 peers. Back in the mid-90s, DEQ issued the Clean Water Act permit that established this program. And the Portland metro area, our surrounding friends and neighbors, received the most stringent permit that there is. However, Bend, who's also on this list, received their permit later, and it's not as stringent, it's not as urbanized. And Bend is the only one that is currently providing this service for less than Wes is. So we're cheaper than all 12 of the other folks that have to meet the same requirements, and we are meeting those requirements. So I think that's a feather in Ron's cap and his team's.
Sure. The great work of all your staff. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I just want to mention the great work that your advisory body does, because they have reviewed all of this and looked at it. And they're very diligent in making sure dollars are spent wisely, particularly when it comes to long-term raising of rates. So I know that, I think I had a preview of this the other night, actually, as a matter of fact. So thanks for doing this. And I, too, any kind of restoration projects you have, I'd love to see them, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, in our work materials, there's a 96-page report with a lot of maps, identifiers on the map, and then followed by a narrative on that. It's quite comprehensive on that. Yeah, so any other questions or comments from commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair, would you now reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners, please?
I will recess as the Water Environment Services and convene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, next on your issues list, your business meeting agenda review for this Thursday, October 20, 2022. You'll have all the consent agenda items you approved today, and you'll have a presentation on the Great Shakeout. October 20th is a statewide earthquake preparedness drill that all public and private entities are asked to honor. So we'll just have a quick presentation for you on what that means. If you have any questions on any item for Thursday's agenda, please let me know. Our final item today, Chair, is Commissioner Communications.
Thank you for that, Gary. I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Schrader, because at noon, I am going to be speaking to the Clackamas County Business Alliance on Project Turnkey, and so I'm going to prepare for that now. And it's a good opportunity to explain the situation yet again on a possible, not yet done, possible purchase of a hotel as bridge housing for people who find themselves homeless. And with that in mind, thank you very much.
All right, we'll see you at noon, Chair. Okay. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, thank you. On the issue of homelessness and problem solving, yesterday I had a tour of the Tukwila Springs project. I was met there by Vahid Brown, Adam Brown, and Devin Ellen, and the managers from Tukwila Springs. I wanted to get a firsthand view of how things are going in the last 3 months since that facility started. Next week, I hope to get a tour of the Econo Lodge to do the same thing, to get a first-hand look at how these projects are working, what the residents feel about how effective the facility is. And this morning, I asked Carolyn Hill to share with the commissioners and some of the staff members a new film on the history of dealing with homelessness, drugs, and mental health in the city of Vancouver, British Columbia. And it's very, very, very informative. We can learn from the mistakes, and we can learn from the successes of other cities so that we can capitalize on success and avoid mistakes. And so there's that film, you'll be getting it on email today. If you don't have time to look at the entire hour, on the email, it asks you to go to 28 minutes and 20 seconds and view a couple minutes there on the question about housing first versus some projects that are drug and alcohol-free zones. So please take a look at that later on. Also, a heads up for MPAC next week. Next Wednesday morning, MPAC will meet the day before. Staff and I will talk about some ideas for the impact response to Metro on the regional transportation plan regarding our ideas on tolling and congestion pricing. So I hope to be able to share that with you. I'm not sure when I'm going to get that information, but I'll share that with you at least by Tuesday morning of next week to get a feel for what you think about that proposed contribution to the impact meeting on Wednesday morning. And and I look forward to the shakeout on 20 October. Thank you.
Commissioner Schull, I have a quick question for you. So the other thing we're going to be talking about, this is for tomorrow, is the River Terrace Urban Growth Boundary Exchange. That's also going to come before MPAC at some point.
Yes.
So we'll be discussing tomorrow, I guess, what
Yes,
our...
right,
okay,
exactly
that's
right.
gonna be-
We have the recommendations from Metro
Okay.
on that we received yesterday, so we'll be talking about, I look forward to that discussion.
Okay, that'll be good. Mr. Fisher, what have you got for us?
Yeah, so we were out at the Sandy Health Center on Thursday. That was quite the celebration, really highlighting the integration of dental health, behavioral health, and physical health, and walking through the center the way that it was laid out. It was very clear this is an integration and a way to treat the whole person, which I thought was pretty awesome. That was a pretty great day. I do want to mention something. I don't know if you're aware. So we've been talking a lot about the crisis and stabilization centers. Oregon Health Authority has a policy option proposal. Gary, is that what the POP means?
Yep.
You don't know? Anyway, I believe that asking because I know my acronyms and know what they mean, but I don't necessarily know what they stand for. But they are requesting funding for crisis and stabilization centers. And I do know are we all going to the Association of Oregon Counties Conference?
I think so.
So good, because there will be a presentation there on this we're going to look at some models from some other counties. I really would like us to get in queue to, if this does become a funding reality at the state, to help us be in line for that funding. And that will take some strategery because we are also, as you know, going back to the legislature for our cost increases for the courthouse, which are in Chief Justice's budget proposal, but we have that capital and this other capital, it might be challenging. So I'm just issue spotting that for everyone. I've been in conversation with the sheriff, especially because the committee that I serve on at Association of Oregon Counties has been working on this issue and wanting to best position us for that possibility, which I think is really important. So that's something to think about. And did you have something to add to that?
Yes, Commissioner Fisher, I have a observation. This morning, Mary Rumbaugh talked to us about the Oregon Health Authority, $4.7 million for behavioral health housing for people who are currently in the state mental hospital. Mm-hmm. My question that came up on that was, who is doing a central kind of coordination on all this money going to behavioral housing, behavioral health? Is there a central sort of set of eyes on the effort to kind of coordinate and put it all together?
So I can kind of answer that, but I can't really answer it without giving my opinion. Mm-hmm. So take it with a grain of salt. But it's been very frustrating that this money was allocated quite some time ago by the legislature, and it's the Oregon Health Authority, as we know, has been very challenged in getting monies that have been allocated out the door to communities. So that's not only in this effort for behavioral health, because we do have this serious crisis with a lack of community placements for people that need secure treatment facilities, people with serious mental health that need a higher level of community care. It's not only that, but we've seen it with, we had Measure 110, it was 2 parts, it was treatment, and then it was decriminalization, but the money for the treatment is just now getting out to communities, that has been such a frustration for those in the community. So is there oversight? Yeah, it's the Oregon Health Authority. And that's where I want to be careful. I can see you shaking your head.
Okay, well-
I don't know that I need to explain more.
Yeah.
So we have to,
Yeah.
as the counties, we're really working hard to build that sort of relationship of accountability with the state, and we've been working hard on that. The local governance committee through Association of Counties is a great place to participate if you are looking for another committee.
Oh, did you go to the meeting the other day?
I wasn't able to go, but it would be great if somebody from Clackamas County attended those meetings, because it really is a lot about accountability. We are the ones that are putting the services out there, and we need that accountability with the state.
Okay, good. Well, we'll just be patient and hopeful just a little bit longer.
Yeah, and we don't really need to be patient. I think being impatient is somewhat appropriate here. I think our legislative partners have done their work in securing the dollars, and then getting them out to the community has been a challenge. But this issue, even before COVID, Sharon Myron and I and Mary Rumbaugh was part of a larger conversation, really looking at, well, where's the capacity right now within the system to create more secure residential placements for people? And within current providers, there was capacity, but we couldn't get the state to join us. And then the legislature, and that was back in 2019. And now there's resources available, so expanding with existing providers or looking at new facility or new residential placements is possible.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Commissioners. I'm going to segue a little bit into the conversation you just had. I had an opportunity to meet with Sheriff Brandenburg about a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that she talked about that was a very successful program was having mental health workers embedded in their response in the sheriff's office. And she did express the need to do more of that. It helps the sheriff's office, it helps the response, and of course, what you're just talking about is, okay, once you identify that, where do you put people? It will also help, I like to think, keeping people out of jail. So I had a conversation with her about that, and I was hopeful we could address that sometime in the near future with Mary Rumbaugh. I know that they do, I think, emergency clinics throughout or they do responses throughout the county. And I know that the sheriff would like to have more of an opportunity, I think, to participate in that. Also had an opportunity to talk to Brian Nava, our treasurer, and Branson, our county assessor. I was just kind of touching bases with our elected officials as a courtesy to see how they're doing, to see what their needs are, to see what do they need from us as colleagues to help them be more successful in their jobs. So that was really good, had good conversations with all three of them and got to know them very well. Last night I attended the North Willamette Valley Research and Extension Center's meeting. And of course, this is the extension area that does all the research that brings added value to the production of agricultural products, whether it be blueberries, whether it be strawberries, whether it be vegetable row crops. And one of the issues that they're dealing with is that they do feel that they are such a large contributor to the local ag economy. They did ask, well, does the county give us any money? And I said, well, of course, we have the extension district here, but evidently it is the regional directors, of which we have one, who decides, helps decides where those allocations go. So I did commit to taking a look at that and encouraging OSU and potentially their regional directors to look a little more closely at the added value of on-the-ground research. One of the things I viewed last night was called agrivoltaics. I think I said that correctly. But one of the things they're studying is the presence of solar energy panels, and how that can be, how could that be commensurate with agriculture in terms of spacing of the panels, and what could be planted in between those panels, even livestock grazing, things of that sort. So I think one of the issues is that as we look for sites for solar panels, one of the tensions has been essentially. Okay, agriculture versus solar panels, and they are trying to find the middle ground and doing research on the middle ground to see if really both of those uses may be compatible with how we use our land. So that was a really interesting thing, and really like to do it. I'll keep you folks up to date on the research. One of the other things I wanted to mention is we had a very good meeting in the Community Economic and Workforce Development Committee from NACO. Colleagues, I am trying to send you those updates on a regular basis so you can read. Every Friday, I get an update from Michael Matthews from NACO about what's been happening at the federal level, and I try to send it to you first, colleagues. Want to make sure Gary gets it. I'm very hopeful it can help inform maybe some of our legislative policy at the federal level. One of the things that they're working on, the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, is giving money to the National Association to do a landscape analysis for county support for small business. It will include access to opportunity, access to funding, access to knowledge, and access to support. So I have a little card that shows that. I don't have it with me, but I had planned to talk to our North Clackamas Chamber folks and some of our other chambers, because we did give ARPA dollars that really funneled through for grants to small businesses to keep them going and keep them afloat. And I believe that that effort that we have should be included in the landscape of how we supported small businesses in our county. So I'm going to move ahead with that. And then the other piece is there is going to be a webinar October 25th at 3 p.m. to 4 with Advancing Economic Mobility Through Community College Partnerships for Workforce Development. I'm planning on attending it, and I hope anyone would like to join me. It's going to be from Allegheny College, Pennsylvania, Community College of Allegheny County, Rebecca Watts from the Western Governors University, and Lindsay Reichland Cruz from the National Skills Coalition. One of the things I'm interested in this is one of the grants that we've been able to take an opportunity from NACO, National Association, is the Economic Mobility Leadership Network. And this feeds into that because basically we look at cases about how we have moved people from, from poverty to prosperity. What are the triggers for that? What are the frameworks for that? What are the policies that we can put in place? And I think working with our community college, which is our major institutions, I think, of education here in the state, as well as Clackamas Community College and Portland Community College. How does that work? How do we do that? And how do we continue to have our partnerships with our community college for education? So that's what I've got for you. And I guess we all have a noon lunch to go to. Yeah. So I guess we better adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Okay.